Okay. Alrighty. Think I got everything squared away there. Let's see. Alright, great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Yes, happy Monday. Today we're going to finish up this Thunder Orb ability and work on the Skeleton Mage AI. I want to revisit two things though before we start. First off, I went ahead and I deleted this buff conditional from these because if you set a variable, then in the if statement it uses a boolean, well, yeah, it does a boolean comparison to whatever this value gets set to. So really, I was doing something redundant by putting semicolon buff after this. So I just simply removed that. Hello Yajit, welcome to the stream. Yeah. So we did that, and then I want to address something else. So I talked with my game designer some more, and all the lightning mages are only not supposed to buff other skeleton mages in general, not just lightning mages. So we added a property inside of monster strategies under the skeleton mage strategy for is skeleton lightning mage, and by default it's false. So now we can actually detect if we just have it running under the skeleton mage AI, because if it's running under that, we know it's a skeleton mage. So we're going to be adjusting that and removing that parameter. I'm also going to go to the monsters configuration file and remove the override under the lightning skeleton mage override properties. And then back in here, we're going to go up to we're going to go back to entity, I believe. And inside of entity.cpp, we have this function called isSkeletonLightningMage. So first off, we're going to refactor this. It's going to be just called isSkeletonMage. And now that we've done that, we're going to change the condition where if it's a player, it's never going to be a skeleton mage, of course. But if it is a monster pointer, then we're going to check if the strategy name is equal to skeleton mage. So we can see here, actually let's get rid of all of this, and we're going to get the monster pointer, and then inside of here we should be able to do strategy and get strategy name and check if it's equal to skeleton mage. And of course, this will be hard-coded, so we would expect that the skeleton mage strategy exists. To make sure in the future that if we decide we want to change the name of this, that this doesn't break because this is hard-coded, we're going to go back into Adventures in Lestoria.cpp under, let's go to actually monster data. And the reason we're going into monster data is this is there's a static initialize function, initialize strategies function, which initializes obviously all the strategies of the monsters right here. So if for some reason this no longer exists, we're just going to actually, I noticed that it has an enum here, so that's interesting. Could we keep the enum there instead? I wonder. But no, we should make sure that there is actually a skeleton mage strategy name. But maybe we should use get strategy, right? Let me see here. So get strategy is, oh, that's the function. All right, so our only way to access it is get strategy name. So under here, we're just going to assert that. We're going to say if monster strategies dot count or contains or does not contain skeleton mage. I think this is a map with the name under monster strategy. Let me take a look real quick. I'm pretty sure the first argument is a string. No, it's an enum. I'm just starting to think we should reference that instead. And I guess the name is under string to strategy map. That's fascinating. So, is there a strategy to string? There's a strategy to strategy function, which... Oh, the name is inside the strategy function. I forgot, we refactored this, didn't we? Okay, that makes more sense. So if we go back to here, what we could actually do is say get strategy, which returns... let me see. So this is the function. I think what we want to do is we didn't make anything new with that system we made. So we're going to go into the monster class and let's actually utilize that. So we have a get strategy and we have a get strategy name. How about we get a get strategy... What should we call this? Like, I don't know. This is kind of confusing, right? Because get strategy is the actual function. So maybe get strategy wants to actually be called get strategy function. Let's try that. So let's refactor this to be get strategy func. And I think this makes way more sense because that's actually what it is. It's not like the strategy. When I think of get strategy, I'm thinking of the enum return. So let's go for that now. So we have get strategy name, but then we also want get strategy, which is returning the enum of that strategy name. So I like that better. So this is going to be monster strategy, which is an enum. And then we will write that function real quick inside of here. So monster strategy. Monster get strategy returns a monster strategy, which should be under the same class. Yeah, okay, so that goes away. And then we're going to, I think, identifiers undefined. Maybe we do have to include that for the type? I guess so. So we're going to return string to strategy map, which lets us convert, right? So we just do strategy map dot at. Did I type that wrong? Wow. At, and then we're going to do get strategy name. And that should be that. So now we have an easy way to connect all these together. So we can go back here, we could say get strategy is equal to, and we can specify a monster strategy enum instead. Monster strategy, and then we just say skeleton mage. So essentially what we want to do is count and see if this enum exists within here, because as long as it does, we're using that as the actual get strategy check. So we have a dependency of that somewhere else, and we are declaring that that's going to have to exist. It's forced to exist or our game won't function properly. So if it doesn't exist, we need to crash. I don't know why that did not bring me to the right file, please. And it still didn't do it. Come on, Visual Studio, work with me here, please. I don't understand. Oh, it's over here. Hello. Initialize monster. Oh, I'm not looking for monster data. I'm looking for monster strategy. Under monster... Yeah, under... Now I'm confused. I think I'm confusing myself here. It's under monster? Initialize strategies? No, there's a monster strategies CPP file, I'm pretty sure. Am I going insane? I think I am. Where was I just now? Oh, it's under run strategy. Okay. That's a little weird, right? That is kind of weird. So anyways, skeleton mage goes here. This has to exist. So if it doesn't, we're just gonna error out. Obviously the line is right here, but if this ever changes or I delete it or something, then we're going to error out because this is a requirement. Either it'll be a compile error because we have to change this right here and then we'll realize, or we'll actually crash when it's not included anymore, and it is required, so. Skeleton Mage underscore mage is a required enum, required dependency for entity is skeleton mage function. And yeah, just letting us know that that is this is required. Yeah. So anytime in our code we depend on something that we hard code, we want to make sure we have a check in there to make sure that it continues to exist so that our game doesn't break unexpectedly at some point if for some reason it no longer exists. So that's just a safety thing. I'm gonna go ahead and let the game rebuild real quick, and then from there we will go ahead and commit these changes and proceed to work on Thunder Orb a little bit more. So it'll just be a minute here to compile. So yeah. In the meantime, let me go grab a drink and turn on the AC. Oh, so it failed. That's interesting. Oh, we have some default arguments to get rid of here. Just a copy-paste error. So let's get rid of this one, because this is the definition of the function, and they were in the declaration of it. So we definitely don't need those there anymore, and I deleted a comma by accident, so we'll fix that to rebuild, and then we should be good to go there. Okay. Just linking everything together, let's write the commit message. So for the commit message, we updated skeleton mage, or is skeleton mage function to prevent it's a lightning mages, to prevent lightning mages from buffing any mage. Trying to think anything else. That really was it, right? And we just removed some stuff from if statements, which we don't really care about that. So we're just going to go ahead and say this is release build 12942. Okay, cool. So we're going to be looking at Thunder Orb now. And for the Thunder Orb, we were in the middle of making the graphic work for it. So we're going to be finishing that up now. Okay, so let's see about doing that. We basically wrote out the constructor and some of the parameters for it. So if we look back in here, oh, actually we have no parameters for the Thunder Orb, so we're probably going to start there. Also in the background, I think it would be wise to go ahead and run unit tests because we'll be coding for a little bit. So this is a perfect opportunity to run some unit tests while we are writing some more code. Just gonna let it build real quick. And so inside the config file, we have a couple of parameters we care about. So the Thunder Orb makes an orb that moves slowly towards the player, so it has a move speed. So we're gonna say Thunder Orb. Also, let me see if I can bring up this window, or is it this window, or this one? There we go. Okay, so Thunder Orb move speed is going to be 60% normal move speed. And it deals every second within 100 range of the player 100% attack damage, lasting for 12 seconds. So we're gonna have like a Thunder Orb tick rate. So basically it's an AoE over time. It ticks it ticks once a second. So we're gonna say tick rate is 1 second. Make these all configurable in case we want to change them later. Thunder Orb range is 100 units, which again is one tile, so 24 pixels away. It's pretty small. And then we have 100% attack damage, so we'll say Thunder Orb attack mult is just going to be 1x, but 1.0x. And it lasts for 12 seconds. So Thunder Orb I'm just gonna say lifetime is 12 seconds. So those are our values. Let's go ahead and implement these configuration parameters into the spawning of this thunder orb. So what we decided to start doing is adding all the parameters into one configuration struct. That way we're not making a constructor that has like 20 parameters in it, 20 arguments. It's a little excessive, and it's just smarter to condense all these things that are related to each other, right? So that's what I've started doing. So we're going to make a new struct. I'm going to go ahead and add to the... Okay, so the unit testing has just started. That's fine. We'll continue to code. So we're going to add something like const thunder orb settings. And then we're going to go ahead and write a struct that contains all these settings and loads them into this struct. So under bullet types, we're going to add in the class, or in this case, the struct called Thunder Orb Settings. So down here, we will make it a public struct. That way it's accessible outside of here too. So struct Thunder Orb Settings. And inside of here, we're going to specify all those parameters. So let me bring up, where is it? These guys? I'm just going to put it on the other side for a minute. Okay, so I can easily reference them. We got the move speed. That's going to be a float. And actually this is a move speed percentage, so I'm going to add in percent there. And yeah, I'm not going to define defaults. Really, we're supposed to initialize these ourselves, so they should never be uninitialized. Tick rate. So this should be a float as well. Tick rate. And then we have the range, which I typed rabj here. So that is also a float. Then we have the attack multiplier, which is going to be a percentage, so we'll keep it as a float. And finally, we have the lifetime, which is also a float. So everything's a float. Now, there is a lifetime parameter inside the Thunder Orb class itself. However, I would argue that I would rather have it in the settings with all the other settings, and then the lifetime just gets passed along to the parent constructor. So we can get rid of that. You can see here we have an attack radius, so I can exchange that for the range. So that can go away. We have the damage per tick. You can see I kind of already did all this, but we're just going to put them all in here, and that's kind of nicer. So damage per tick and tick rate. Then we have upper level. We have the speed, which is the move speed percent. So again, get rid of that one. And then we just have some very like generic parameters left for any given bullet. So we'll do that. Okay, these are supposed to be semicolons as well. Great. So now that I've adjusted the args or the parameters here, I need to go ahead and add in a const Thunder Orb settings, and we'll go ahead and copy the new constructor back into the implementation over here. And again, remove the default params. We don't need them. To be redeclared, that is. Okay. And then we get to fill in the blanks. So, firstly, we get to copy over settings to settings. Now, I didn't make a local settings variable, so we have to do that first. Back over to bullet types real quick. Add a Thunder Orb settings member called settings. Now we can copy over. And then we had all these variables which we're going to store stuff. But now we just got one settings variable, so we don't need all that. And then here we get to just copy it over. So that's nice. Under attack radius, we'll pass along settings dot hello? Attack radius. Oh, okay. These don't exist anymore. They go away. And then in here, speed is now settings dot, we have move speed percent. So this is actually a percentage of the move speed provided by based on the target. So we're going to grab the target's move speed and multiply it by the move speed percent. Now, we don't actually have a way to grab the target's move speed directly yet, unfortunately. So we're going to have to make that. We don't, as you can see, we don't have anything for that. So it would be something like get move speed mult. That is the exact function that both player and monster pointers use, so we'll just keep it the same. I actually think it's move SPD mult, if I'm being more exact. So we'll double check that, but that's going to be multiplied by the move speed percent, which is presumably a value between 0 and 1, or in other words, a percentage divided down into a float. Everything else here I think is fine other than lifetime. That's going to be copied from settings.lifetime. And same right here to initialize the lightning bolt emitter. So that should take care of that. Now let's implement the missing get move speed mult function for an entity. So let's go over there. We tend to visit this one a lot. Let's see how our tests are doing. Okay, halfway done. One failed? Is that old? It might be an old fail? Monster tests? A serve failed. Uh-oh. Monster hit sound should have played. Apparently, monster hit sound has played 8 times. That could be because we didn't reset the log, because it's a static variable, so I think it has a side effect of being run with multiple tests. So I don't think the test failed because it's not doing it right. It failed because we didn't reset this variable, which is a static variable. So under the sound effect class, let's go in there and let's fix that. We should have so we have a static initialize function, which presumably is called every time the sound effect system is initialized. And in here, we can see that by default, we iterate through all the sound effects and add them. But let's first clear our sounds played log by just calling clear. That way it's always empty. Now, I don't think this function's actually called when a test is started, so we're probably going to have to do that as well. And we're also going to have to add in that we only want to do this down here and load in new sound effects if we're not in testing mode. So if not testing mode enabled. Also, this is going to be unlikely because in the real build of the game, this is very much going to happen all the time. It's only unlikely because it occurs when we're testing. So, oh, excuse me, this is actually likely to happen, not unlikely to happen. So we'll signal to the compiler that yes, please do this most of the time, because it will happen. Yes. So now we can actually call sound effect initialize safely inside of a testing mode. Where does it get called normally? Let's just make sure. Let's go to find all references, and it is called normally inside where? Sound effect initialize is called in adventures in Listeria.cpp under on user create. So we know by default that unit tests do not call this function because not every game's module needs to be initiated. So we have to do this manually in our tests. And more specifically, we're going to have to do it in this one because this is where we actually check or care about the sounds played log. So what I like to do is under, perhaps, let's say here, we're going to throw in sound effect initialize. And I guess we could do this for all tests. I don't think it hurts because there's only one call that has to be made. So it's not like this is really slowing down tests, right? So we can go ahead and open the rest of the tests and implement it in those as well. I really should make some kind of function that is like, okay, these are all the things that globally we have to initialize, because we kind of don't have that right now. Unless that's what this is. What is this? Initialize game configurations? Okay, that's just adventures in Listoria. That's fine. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that. Is it a global though? That's interesting. This is a global function. That's kind of cool. Alright, anyway. Oh, it looks like test game.reset is always called. So if we can do it in the constructor, that would be great. I'm starting to think that's actually a good place to put any static variables that need reset, right? Why not just put it in the constructor of Adventures in Lestoria, assuming it doesn't have any dependencies, right? Because it is static. I guess the only problem is it might not be public. Like, is it public or is it not public? Because if it's not public, then... okay, so it's private. And, I mean, that's fine. I don't really want to expose it, except for very specific purposes, right? So I guess what we'll do is we'll open up all these, like I said, and we'll go ahead and actually add them to these tests as well, because I don't see a reason we shouldn't. So we'll go ahead and add sound effect initialize there, and here, and here. Actually, it doesn't need to be in geometry test. That doesn't even initialize anything about the game engine. Yeah, so we go ahead and do it in all these as well, in case we have to reset sound effects there too. So that would be, I think, the only reason that that test would fail. And we could try that again as well. It looks like for player test we have the same thing, because we're probably testing, yeah. So now the structure has 66 calls, when obviously it should have been reset by now. Adrenaline rush, multiplier speed multiplier increased by 10% to times 1.1 failed. Did we mess up the buff somehow? We're gonna have to look at that. So these 3 tests actually failed on us. So that's interesting, right? I guess we're gonna have to rerun these. Which is good that they fail, because it tells us that we've done something wrong with our game, right? Which is important to know. That's why these unit tests exist to begin with, of course. So now it's just a matter of, okay, what did we do wrong in the first place, and why? So I'm going to let that recompile so these 3 tests can run again. These 2 should be fixed because we're resetting the structure, the static structure, with every test. This one is new and it's buff related. We recently changed how the buff code works, in the sense of the structures we use and the returns we make. So it's entirely possible we broke something using that. It's good that our tests can detect that so we can figure out what's going on and fix it. In the meantime, let's work on implementing this getMoveSpeedMult function again, back in entity.cpp. Just decided to take a look at the tests, and we finally noticed that something broke, right? So in here, let's implement that function. That is not what I wanted. We're implementing getMoveSpeedMult. I feel like I already added it, but okay. Const, it's going to be a float. GetMoveSpeedMult. Also will not modify anything. And then inside of ThunderOrb, let's go ahead and add that. So, or not, excuse me, not ThunderOrb, entity. So we're gonna go under entity.cpp, and in here, let's go ahead and write the implementation for this function. Again, it should be really easy because getMoveSpeedMult is in both classes, the player pointer and the monster pointer class. So calling getMoveSpeedMult and returning it should also do the exact same thing, which is what this macro essentially does, is getMoveSpeedMult. It'll just return it for us, so yay. So we have 2 failed builds. Maybe it was just that the incomplete ThunderOrb code from earlier. Oh yeah, we weren't done with all this. So this should all compile now. Obviously I would have to recompile it to run these tests again. So we'll do that. Just having fun with the sun right now. Okay. So back here, we have implemented it. So what we're expecting is that this is going to be the speed. Now, it's based on the move speed of the entity as well. So while we do have getMoveSpeed multiplier here, this is not in units. This is just the multiplier. So this is going to be a 1 or whatever it is, right? And this is going to be a percentage of this. So now we also have to take that and multiply it by 100, which is going to give us the actual move speed of the target. That is trying to move, because 100 units is, or 100 units of movement is 100 pixels per second, which is essentially how we did that. So even though we're saying that 100 units in distance means one tile, for movement speed purposes, it's 100 pixels per second per... Each percentage of movement is 1 pixel per second, is what we're saying. So it's kind of interesting, it's kind of arbitrary, that's just how we did it from the beginning. So that's that. Now let's take a look at the actual Thunder Orb functionality. So in here, we just have a homing bullet class, because this is a homing bullet. It's supposed to follow whatever its target is. So we set our target inside the homing bullet constructor, along with passing along other parameters. But this Thunder Orb is also going to emit stuff from its emitter. So on top of having homing bullet properties, we have an emitter to populate too, which I haven't even talked about yet. So in here, we already put that we're going... by default, I put that our start pause and end pause is pause pause, but really our end position is going to be like, imagine you have this little circle for the orb, and in the center, it's going to reach out, like the lightning spokes are going to reach out towards one of the ends of it. So this lightning emitter is going to create lightning bolts going towards its end position from its starting position, which is a center point. So we have to constantly update the lightning bolt emitter's position during this time to make sure it's in sync with the Thunder Orb. So we're going to say lightning... Ooh, we actually don't have access to the private members of this class. I think we're going to need to if we want to modify it easily. So we're also going to have to call the update function for it inside the update function of the Thunder Orb, because nothing else is going to update it for us. So in here, we'll go ahead and do that, but we're going to need access to the private members of our lightning orb emitter, or lightning bolt emitter. So we're going to make the Thunder Orb update function a friend function of the lightning bolt emitter class. So we'll go down here and we'll say it's friend void Thunder Orb update. Now, if it doesn't know about the Thunder Orb class yet, we're going to have to forward declare it. So we'll go ahead and do that now. It doesn't need to know anything about the Thunder Orb class in terms of its members or functions, but it does need to know of its existence. And then we can actually call Thunder Orb update. Incomplete type Thunder Orb is not allowed. Oh, I guess we do have to... Wait, really? Or can we do this? I don't... See, this is where I was getting confused last time, right? It's like, okay, but this doesn't exist, right? This would be for the update function for the lightning bolt emitter, which wouldn't make any sense. So it needs to know what the function is. So I actually lied. Well, lied unintentionally because I thought I could just forward declare, but apparently not. So we're going to include Thunder bullet types.h inside of here. Now, I think we're going to run into an issue because under bullet types, I think we also include the emitter class. Maybe indirectly, but I think we do, because otherwise we have no clue what a lightning bolt emitter is, right? So, let's have a look real quick what we're gonna do here. So, we have entity trail effect. Let me see here. Yeah, so it's an incomplete type right now. And we can't just include emitter.h here, because then we're just going to have this infinite loop of includes. So we're going to have to split something up here in order to make this work. As in, we can't have both. We can't include Thunder Orb here as a dependency. So let's try to figure out what we want to do for that. We could just make the Thunder Orb class a friend class, or we could forward declare the function, like we just specified that it exists with this definition, but it's defined somewhere else. That's also a possibility. I don't know if that's allowed, but let's find out, because we can't do this. It's going to create this constant, like, this infinite loop, right? So, like, just doing this, I don't think would be enough. We have to actually put it inside of the class Thunder Orb class. But this also isn't enough because this isn't the full picture of a Thunder Orb. It's like, essentially, this would be like, now we're defining the class, but we kind of can't, right? Like, this isn't the full picture of a Thunder Orb class. Now we got two different Thunder Orb classes with two different sizes in them. The compiler won't know which to pick, so we can't do that either. So we're just out of options for this. We have to make, like, getters or something if we want to do this. Unfortunately, this won't be an option unless we do a lot more separation. I don't really like that idea. So we're going to avoid that option and instead go the route of adding some getters. So let's go ahead. Well, we have to actually add some setters too, not necessarily getters. And they have to be public, they have to be accessible. So let's do void set start and pause. We can do both at the same time. And we can supply them as two arguments here. One for the start pause and one for the end pause. Like so. And it'll go ahead and set those for us. So now, inside of the lightning bolt emitter class, which I think is right here, we're going to go ahead and add that in. Alright, lightning bolt emitter. Set start and pause. Okay. Also, today's going to be a kind of short stream today because we started pretty late, unfortunately, but still try to get some things done. So since the argument names are the same as the actual class member names, we have to put this pointer in front of it in order to change this class's start and end pause like this. And at least that'll give us access to the functionality we're going to need inside of thunderorb.cpp here. So we're going to go ahead and calculate, because the start pause is simply the position of the Thunder Orb as it's moving, but the end position we're going to determine randomly. We're just going to have like lightning bolts sparking out from all different angles, so we can just generate randomness on the fly for that specifically. We could wait and like adjust it every second or something, then we would have to store it inside of here. So we could go the route of storing a variable that we constantly change and just adjust it every once in a while and store a timer or something like that, which I'm okay with. It's just it's kind of weird, but it should work. So what I'm saying is that we're gonna have some kind of lightning bolt random pause, and it'll be initialized to 0, 0, and it's going to be static. So this function will always use this variable, and every instance of it uses it. So let's say more than one Thunder Orb gets generated, there will actually be only one instance of this, so they would both use the same variable. However, they're going to adjust it on the fly before the ticks happen. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if they're adjusting it every second anyways, these lightning bolt emitters, because they get created at the same time, are still going to reflect in terms of the end positions. Like, if this Thunder Orb, because they tick at the same time, so you can imagine, okay, Thunder Orb object gets created, lightning bolt emitter object gets created, both of their tick timers tick down at the same time. Another Thunder Orb spawns in, it's going to have its own starting spawn time and tick time, etc., etc. So it should work out. In other words, if we adjust that parameter, even though it's the same function being shared by multiple lightning bolt emitters, the randomness being adjusted at different times shouldn't matter. So what we're going to do here is say change lightning bolt random pause timer, and just have it tick down. So at the very start of this function, or excuse me, at the very start of this object's lifetime, we're going to go ahead and set it equal to the emitter's timer here, which is 1 second. So every second we basically want it to change, right? So down here, we're going to say change lightning bolt, random pause timer, minus equals FE elapsed time. That is the frame time that has passed during this tick. And once it's less than or equal to, let's say 0, because it's going to be counting down, we can add 1 second to it, and then go ahead and adjust the random position. And I would even argue this should be a while, but realistically, that's... oh, excuse me, not a while. I'm thinking of something else. This should be technically a while it's negative, but we know that's going to be impossible. We can never have an FP elapsed time greater than 1/3 of a second. That's just hard-coded, or 1/30th of a second. That's just hard-coded into the engine. So we know that this is never going to stay negative for more than 1 frame. So we don't have to worry about that issue. And here we're going to choose, so basically we need to choose a random polar coordinate and then convert it to a Cartesian coordinate, because I like to think of it as a magnitude and angle. So let's do the polar coordinate version of this. And I think it's first magnitude and then the angle, but let me double check. So inside of VF2D, there should be a polar function and a Cartesian function we can reference. I'm not seeing it for some reason, but let's look here. Polar. I don't know why every time I search for this I can't find it, but yeah, it's magnitude followed by the angle. So inside of here, let's say the magnitude is going to be, well, it's the radius, right? That will never change. So settings.radius. So we could even simplify this a little bit and say we're only interested in a random angle, but we're still going to generate this anyways. So it's settings.range, which is actually in a unit distance, so we have to convert it to pixels. At least this should be in a unit range, so I'm going to make a comment saying that. In units. And this is important because if I think it's in pixels, I'm going to do the wrong math. So to convert to pixels, we're going to divide by 100 and multiply by 24. And that'll make sure that gets converted correctly. And then for the angle, we're going to randomly choose. So util random between 0 and 2 pi. It needs to be in radians. And then we're going to convert it to Cartesian coordinates. And then finally, it has to be relative to the start position. So essentially, we're going to set the start position now. Well, it's going to be the position of the thunder orb, right? So we just add the position of the thunder orb. I'm going to use the getter, actually, get pause. I think there's a get pause. Okay, there isn't a get pause. I was wrong. So just use pause. And we're going to add that to the Cartesian coordinate conversion of this polar coordinate here. So now that we have that, that's going to be set as the end pause for the lightning. So we're going to now call the setter we made lightning set start end pause. And inside of here, the start pause is going to match the position of the thunder orb, while the end position is going to be on that outer range that we just made. So it's going to be the lightning bolt random pause static function member we made. And why doesn't it like this? This is undefined. Did I type it wrong? Let me go look again. Maybe I typoed it. I called it... Oh, it's not even in here. It's in, Where is... Wait, what? Oh. It's in the wrong place. It's not supposed to be in the emitter, it's supposed to be in the thunder orb, so... Yes. You were in the wrong place, my friend. Okay. So that should be fixed. And now... we basically have random lightning just zapping around this orb every second. I don't think there's much else to be had right now, at least for this thing, but we'll have to play with it and see what that looks like. Next, we have to work on the damage in area over time effect. So essentially, every second that this thing ticks, it also needs to try and hurt the player. So this tick timer actually is not only useful for the lightning bolt random position, it's useful for actually hurting the player at the same time, because that's the tick amount. So the 1 second actually reveals itself as not being just a hard-coded 1 second, but actually being the tick rate of the damage that's supposed to be applied as well. So we can actually modify the name of this from being this to being damage tick timer. And at the same time, it so happens to also be changing the lightning bolt random position. So inside of Thunder Orb, yes, we will also modify those references too. So now that we've done that and we figured out what the true nature of this variable is, let's go ahead and implement the tick damage. First, we have to figure out if the player is in range of us. So again, we're going to use the in range function. So we have our game pointer, which actually I don't think is... It might be included in bullet types. I doubt it. But anyways, apparently it's working, so I'll just go with it for now. Game, get targets in range. It's a pretty recent function we made. At least we made it in the sense of we really needed this and we were doing it the hard way before, so we kind of fixed that up. So based on wherever the position of this Thunder Orb currently is, and a radius being from settings.radius, or range, again, this is in... So I think this wants to be an actual pixel distance. I don't think it wants to be a unit distance, so we'll convert that as well. 100 times 24. And then we have the upper level flag, which is just going to be check on upper level. And the hurt target type, oh, let me put the Z. And then the hurt target type is just players, assuming it's friendly. So we'll actually put a ternary operator here, depending on whether or not we're friendly. So if we are friendly, then we're hurting monsters, because this is a friendly bullet. So hurt monsters only. But if it's non-friendly, it's coming from a monster, so look for player targets. After that, we'll get a list of our targets. And then we're supposed to hurt any of these targets that are in range. So actually, we can call the hurt function instead. So it looks like game's not being recognized. So I'm going to have to include two things, both Adventures in Listoria and the include macro for include game, because it's a global game pointer. So that gives us access to that, at least I hope so. Initial value of reference to non-const must be an L value. But also we're not gonna use get targets in range, we're actually gonna hurt. So we don't actually have to do anything here unless we have to do some extra side effects, which I don't think we have to. Yeah, we just deal damage, so that's easy enough. Just deal some damage. So let's fix this up a little. So the only difference here is right after the radius, we have to specify how much damage we deal. So we're going to have the attack multiplier multiplied by the attack of the entity. So I also don't think we have a getter for what the entity's attack is. So this would be like get attack. So whatever this is multiplied by the attack multiplier, which doesn't exist yet, so we're gonna have to implement that as well. But both monster and player pointers have this function as well, so it will be fairly simple to implement, just like the other one. So let's go back to the entity header. I'm gonna move this guy over here. And essentially, it's the same idea. We're gonna get the attack, how much damage we're supposed to do. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, get attack is actually an integer. Yeah, it returns an int, so it's never gonna be a floating point. It's gonna get rounded up or down. I forget the exact formula, but it's not going to be a float. We can't have decimal damage. So we're going to adjust this to be a constant return type. And then inside the entity class, let's just implement that real quick. Again, both the monster and the player have this function already. So using our convenient macro here, it will automatically return the correct one based on what the type of the variant already is. So back in here, we now have get attack. We multiply that again by the attack multiplier. Oh, and this isn't called entity, it's called target. But we don't actually know what the target is, do we? Because this is gonna hurt anything in range. So it's like, oh no, we do know our target. Our target's right here. We don't set our target, do we? Oh, it's right here. But it looks like we have no access to our target. Is it not private? Or we need to make it a protected member and allow our child class to be able to access it. So homing bullet is inside of bullet types. So let's go back there and let's look for homing bullet. Homing bullet. So yeah, target is private. We're going to move it into, we're going to upgrade it to a protected member. This way, child classes that inherit from it will have access to it, which I think is important. It's already const, so we know it's never going to be modified, which is good. But we do need to know what our target is. So we're going to do that. So that actually hurts all these targets. We don't have to do anything else with them. So I'm actually going to remove the variable that captures them. And that should be that. That should be most of the implementation of homing orb. So it looks like I ran these again and they still asserted... Did this even compile? I don't think it compiled, did it? Yeah, there were more errors. I'm gonna go ahead and let the unit tests run again because I want to make sure... I want to address the... especially the adrenaline rush skill buff test, because apparently it doesn't work now, which is concerning to me. Because that means we broke one of our buffs that was important to us. I want to take a look at the assert exactly. It was talking about move speed. So we did modify what modified move speed. So let's just take a quick peek at the code again. We added Adrenaline Rush to the list of buffs that modified move speed intensity. Now, according to the test, the move speed multiplier ended up being 1 instead of the expected 1.1, so that 10% never got implemented. So that's interesting, because under Adrenaline Rush we added a comment. The comment says, the intensity indicates the stat count this buff gives, which in turn increases attack. So I think the code before this was essentially making sure that, or just adding to it. It was literally multiplied by intensity. All this was. So we combined it together, right? Is for some reason get buffs just not doing what it's supposed to do? Like, that's my next question, right? Why wouldn't it work? So I'm curious what's gonna happen there. We just have to wait for this rebuild and we can see. But I am very, very curious how we managed to break this one. I hope everybody's Monday is going well. It might even be Tuesday already, depending on where you are in the world. But yes, hopefully all y'all are having a good day or night. Yeah, but we should be able to test out the Thunder Orb relatively well. Graphics-wise, I think it might need something. We did make a Thunder Orb image, so that might be enough for it to represent almost clearly what it's supposed to do. But we do have 10 errors here. Let me see what happened. It said 1 succeeded and 1 failed. So like the unit testing part failed. Use of undefined type sound effect. So it doesn't even compile yet. Let's go ahead and add that. Include sound effect.h. And did anything else mess up because of that? Item tests also did. So let's go ahead and do that as well. Item tests.cpp. I didn't mean to pin it. Go ahead and add the include there too. And let's go ahead and rebuild real quick. It shouldn't take that long because we didn't modify any headers. We were just adding some includes. So it will put those headers into those files and link everything together for us. And then let's see what happens with these 3 unit tests now, because the only reason these 2 failed was because we didn't reset that static sound effects container, but that was just my fault for not thinking about that. Oh, also engine test is missing that too. Okay. Seems to be getting around to everything. Go, go, go! Alright. So now we're running the unit tests. Again, I expect these 2 to now pass. So that one passed. That one still failed. And that one's okay. So we have 1 test failing now. Now we get to debug this one. So first I'm just gonna take a look at it in general, what's going on, right? So move speed, this is the assert that is failing. So we are performing this ability, which supposedly gives us the adrenaline rush buff because we assert if this statement is true, which it is. And then we're seeing if our move speed has been increased, which apparently it doesn't. So I'm going to go ahead and breakpoint right here, and we're going to see what gets move speed returns first. So we'll debug it from here. And hopefully it'll either be very clear or like for some reason like adrenaline rush doesn't get applied right or something. Like that could very well be a thing too. Alright, so let's go into get move speed mult and let's just see what we got. So first, base movement speed obviously is 10. None of these buffs should exist. I'm just curious what the get buffs interaction is going to be like. So if we look here, get buffs returns, oh wait, this is covered up. Let me, see what I can do here. Oh, I should move this, actually. Let me do this. So I'll put you here, so you guys can be there. Yeah, that makes more sense. So, under here, can I resize you, please? Thank you. Just move you guys along, so we have something more like this. Okay, so, under here, get buffs returned no items. So we're gonna go under here and let's go inside of get buffs here. So this returns a filter view again. So I don't think we have to step through this, but essentially this find is going to go through all 4 of these types of buffs, see if any buffs exist. Now what current buffs are on the player is the next question, right? So we're looking at buff list. There is an adrenaline rush buff that lasts for 8 seconds on the player right now. So we're expecting that this thing will count when it returns. So we look here under autos. Get buffs will return a size of 1 element. So it looks like it's returning it. So we're going to iterate through there. This is the buff. And again, we can see it is that adrenaline rush buff. Now, what's its intensity is the next question, because that's probably going to be the kicker. So the intensity is 0. So for some reason, that's not working. Why is the intensity 0? So something went wrong there then. I wonder if before it was just if buff exists, right? Let's look at the old code for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blame all this right here. Well, let's just skip blame in general, right? And then we're going to view the history around this code. So essentially, some of this code was modified very recently. Today is the 9th, so we can see there were commits made on the 6th. This is roughly when we made the modifications, so we're gonna look at that. And as you can see, some of this code hasn't been touched for years, which naturally happens, right? This is an old code base. So March 6th, this commit is what we're interested in. It clearly has the change we're interested in, and we can go to, so we're interested in player.cpp. So we can go ahead and pull that up, and we get a diff of that. Let's go ahead and put this on a larger monitor where we can see more and do more stuff. So in here, what did we do? Well, it looks like we added everything into this line from here. Let's look at the old. I don't know why you're way over here, but let's bring you back. Okay, so before, oh, you can see it had a thing. So I didn't read this part. I just did a quick cut and paste, bringing them together, right? So this needs to take the movement speed and multiply it by this movement speed increase variable. So that needs to be kept separate. So deleting that code was a bad idea. That needs to be kept separate from the rest of the movement speed buffs, naturally. So we're going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and stop now. Well, I'm glad our unit test catches that, because that's important, right? We have to make sure that's working. We can remove Adrenaline Rush now from the list of buffs that are supposed to be applied there. And actually, this comment is lying to us. So I'm actually going to change that. I'm going to say that it comes from this configuration variable. Maybe early on in development of this enchantment, I was originally going to make the intensity based on stat count, and then I realized it needed to be convertible, right? So intensity does not indicate the stat count, intensity determined by this variable. Intensity is 0 for the purposes of using this buff. That should be a note. So we'll put in all caps, note. Okay, determined. Okay. Yes, so let's go back to monster, and again, I originally debated like, maybe adrenaline rush, that's fine, like, we can still include it for monsters, but in the end, at the end of the day, they wouldn't even really use this, so we can go here and actually just delete it. It's not really required for monsters to have that, and even if they did, well, it wouldn't do anything, essentially, right? So we removed it from there. It just is not going to be applied to monsters. It doesn't do anything. Okay, so back over here. Let's go ahead and run that test one more time and make sure it now passes. We've made the correct fix, so we should expect Adrenaline Rush to now work. And as long as that works, all of our unit tests are fixed. It looks like it's going to be a big recompile because we had to adjust the buff header, which propagates through many source files, so that will be a little bit. But yes, the next thing we're going to look at is the Thunder Orb in action in-game. I can't just run it right now because I want to make sure this unit test is fixed, but that's what we'll do next. And then after this, all the Lightning Mage ability stuff will be done. So the next thing we can do is we have to work on the AI for the mages. So we can kind of briefly look over that just to get an idea of what that's like. The AI is described in the very first mage. So the mage behavior. Spawns with 0 mana, recovers 5 mana a second. We already have that covered. That's when we first implemented the spellcasting system. Every second we look up the ability list and cast an ability with a certain probability. The mage tries to move to an area that is 700 to 900 range away from the player and wanders around randomly in this area. If the mage is inside the effect area of a skeleton captain flag, it tries to stay there along the 700 to 900 range, as long as the 700 to 900 range can still be obeyed. So, ability casts also have a higher priority than movement. It will never try to move during an ability cast. I think you may turn off the warnings to slightly increase the compilation speed. I'd rather not, honestly. Sometimes they actually are helpful. I'd rather keep them on, even if I gain maybe like 10 seconds or something. I left the assert in there, or the breakpoint in there, so I'm gonna remove it. I'm pretty sure the warnings aren't costing me that much time, because I know when I compile in release mode, it's essentially just the same thing. I don't really gain much out of it, unless it's like if there's like a million warnings, then maybe, because then it's trying to write it all to a log and that's going to take a lot more time. But we're only talking a couple thousand, so at most I don't think it hurts that much. That's just my theory though, I could be wrong. But sometimes it's useful to see what kind of warnings I'm generating. Okay, let me commit this real fast. We went ahead and fixed Adrenaline Rush, speed mult unit test error, and fixed not resetting the sound log. I'm gonna put sound effect, sound log, sounds played, static variable, in between unit tests. So it's basically a variable bleeding into other unit tests, the state of it, which is bad. You want to have a clean slate every single time. So we fixed those two issues. We also implemented Thunder Orb, but we don't know if it works yet, so we're going to test that next. Alright, back to release, and let's go ahead and see what we've got so far. Okay. I actually turned on some warnings even in release because I'm like, I kind of need to know certain warnings. No discard warnings, I think, is one. Let me see what are popping up here. Yeah, like any suspicious conversions, lossy cast conversions. I do want those kinds of things popping up, of course. I think that's kind of important sometimes. And I'm also seeing, I think that's it actually. That's most of them. It's like these should be static casted so they can be compile time like confirmed. So some days if I'm bored, I'll just go around adding static cast to everything, but I typically just use the explicit cast. Like technically I know what I'm doing, but at the same time it's like compiler wants me to static cast. Also just these macro redefinitions, which is funny. Sometimes certain macros I use actually conflict with stuff in like a Linux OS, so or Mac OS, and then I'm like, shoot, I have to add more like undefs or defs sometimes. It's funny when that happens. We also crashed. Why? Trying to read flow. Oh, failed to load Thunder Orb from the game pack. Okay. Yeah, we have to reset the game pack because we added a new game pack asset. So that's just a thing. It's very simple. It just regenerates all the assets for us, which is fine. Not a big deal. Unless we actually forgot to add it, which I'm pretty sure I added it, so I don't think that's the reason it's not working. And then we don't actually... Do we spawn the Thunder Orb yet? Hold on. Did I add this? So I think I made Lightning Mages appear. Yes, so they have two abilities. Thunder Orb is one of them. Is it supposed to be Thunder Orb all one word? That's my next question. That looks weird. But then again, I don't think the game starts if I typed an invalid ability. I'm pretty sure. Okay, it is all one word, so I'm just gonna leave it as is. Also, we don't do anything yet. That's the next part of this. Is I needed to actually do it. So, I'm actually going to comment out the speed up ability right now, because I don't want it to... I only want to test Thunder Orb. We know speed up works. So we're not doing add effect now. This is a bullet, so we're going to do... I believe it's just create bullet. Like, I have a macro for this. And in here, we specify the type of bullet. So this is a Thunder Orb. I think we're gonna have to include the Thunder Orb class in here for it to actually work, but that's where we're doing it. Thunder Orb constructor is the position we're casting at, so it'll be the cast pause. I think it's just pause. We have the target, so the target is the player in this case, so we just do game get player, and there is a constructor for entity that constructs an entity based on a player pointer, so that should work. Although standard make unique might complain, so we'll see. This is just a wrap. This macro is a wrapper for standard make unique, just to make it more clear and less cryptic what's going on. So now the settings. So the settings I'm actually going to initialize up here because I don't want it to crowd up the constructor, which is the whole point of this thing. So we have our Thunder Orb settings. Okay. And inside of here, settings, we'll construct each member. So I hate that it does this. Like, I wish when I pressed a dot, it would actually show, like, them in order. Like, that would be super nice, because we have to initialize them in order. That's actually a rule. So I kind of wish it did that, because that would just make things easier for me, instead of having to pull them up every time. So, but yeah. Alright, so let's go ahead and initialize all these. Move speed percent comes from Thunder Orb. Where's my... Here it is. So here's our properties file once again. Thunder Orb move speed is a percentage, which again will convert on the fly. So read in as a float, divide it by 100. And then we have the tick rate. All these are reading in as a float, which is fine. Then we have the range, which is going to stay in units. I kind of made it a unofficial rule that I'm going to make sure they maintain their original, like, unit. So if the variable itself is supposed to be in units, it's going to stay that way. I'm not going to try to force it to be something else. I'm going to force it to be whatever the config format wants it to be. That way when I look at it here, I'm just like, oh, it's just the value straight from the config file itself. I'm not confusing myself. So that's that. Then next we have the rotate towards speed, which I'm just going to keep 0. We're not going to rotate it like that. The upper level is based on the monster's upper level variable. And then it's going to be a non-friendly bullet. I'll keep the blending color white. The scale will stay at 1, and the image angle will be 0. We're not going to adjust any of those variables. So I can leave the rest as defaults, and then I have to put end bullet to end the macro. And that should be everything we need. Hopefully Make Unique doesn't complain about that. And then we just return that the spell succeeded. It's never going to fail, so the spell has been completed at that point. And I'm happy with that. It says possibly incorrect order of operations. I think it's just, that's just a warning that pops up for this thing. Because it looks like it's going to cast it to a const pointer, and then it's going to use indirection on it, which turns it into the type reference. So that makes sense. I think it just warns me that, hey, this is kind of weird syntax. Alright, so the lightning mage is only going to do thunder orb now, so let's see what happens. It costs 40 MP, so it will take at least 8 seconds to generate that much MP before it tries to use it. So let's hope that actually comes out the way it does. Here's to hoping. I forgot I have other mages and testing stuff in here. I should have removed them to reduce the noise so I can have a better control case, but we'll see. We'll just have our guys try to fire these things and see. Okay, we crash. I mean, that's fair. What happened? Thunder or move speed does not exist. Oh, I have to do a config float, not just directly pull from these. Yeah, that makes more sense. So because these are looking for these exact key names, but these are wrapped inside of other objects. Like this is under the skeleton mage object, which is also under the monster strategy object. As you can see, it's a very large object file. So because of that, we can't access it through that name. We have to access it through another name. So we have a wrapper macro specifically to deal with this situation as well, called config float, which accepts a monster and a strategy it pulls from, and then it tries to read it from multiple places. The location it ends up choosing is based on whether or not we've overwritten it or not. So let me go to the end here and do that. And I'll essentially do the same thing, except I need to move these guys, because it just accepts the string, it doesn't convert it. And then these two calculations get moved to the outside to get processed afterwards. So essentially, while I let this build, these things process to where if there is a name of this variable inside the actual monster strategy, or inside the actual monster itself, that is considered an override. So it will use that property instead. This makes it flexible enough to where, okay, so each strategy has default variables, and then we can make variants of those monsters by just specifying different parameters as overrides for different monsters, using the same monster strategy that we've used before. So that's how it pulls, or it decides which variables to use. It's a pretty elegant system, and it's very handy. We've been able to reuse a couple strategies multiple times throughout the game. So that's nice. Alright, so I'm gonna see if it can spawn a thunder orb now, or we just crash some more. So this says, passing a value that creates an unusable infinite value while normalizing, this should not be happening. Wow. Okay. Somehow we're creating infinity here. So let's take a look at the call stack. And that's under util point 2 of a homing bullet. So this is like the move target, like it's trying to move towards a target. So my guess is the homing bullet got spawned on the player, and now there's no distance, so it points to the same location, which is infinity if you normalize the variable, because it's going to divide by 0. Because the distance is 0, so normalizing a vector with 0 distance divides by 0, which is how we get infinity. So first of all, this shouldn't be spawning on the player directly. Now that I think about it, it should be spawning from the monster's position, moving towards the player. At least I think that's what the intention was. So, creates an orb that slowly moves towards player. It doesn't say where it's supposed to be created, but we can kind of assume if it's going to move towards the player, it doesn't start on the player. So, first of all, that needs to happen. Second of all, if we do run into that issue where it ends up on top of the player, it shouldn't be trying to calculate moving towards it anymore, right? Because the distance is 0. So I'm going into the homing bullet code. I'm considering that a bug. Like, we just shouldn't do anything if the distance is 0. So right here, we're looking at, where do we call that normalize? It's right here when we do util point 2. So actually, this doesn't even happen more than once. This is essentially an error that occurs if we're spawning something on top of something else. So I would argue that this needs to have a check that says if distance is equal to 0, just fail right away. But then that has me thinking, should we just not allow that in the first place, right? So point 2, maybe we should just add something here. If pause from and pause to are equal to each other, we should error out. We're going to assume that's unlikely, and the compiler should not try and should not expect it, but it might happen, right? And if it does, then yeah. I assume polar is also the same way. If we convert to polar, I think atan2 gets called. So atan2, if it has 2 of the same value, what happens, right? Because turning into a vector, it'll do n minus start, which means it'll be like 0, 0. For 0 will be the magnitude, essentially. So the result is not that one. Wait, what? What is this? Standard polar? What is that? What is it? What even is that? Under a complex number? The polar coordinate of a complex number? Anyway, we don't want that. For some reason, I can never get to polar from... It's like it just doesn't know this function exists. Magnitude, right? Magnitude is a square root. So square root of 0 is undefined, right? What's square root of 0? Wait, square root of 0 is 1, isn't it? I'm pretty sure. Square root of 0. Oh, square root of 0 is 0. Never mind. What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of 0 squared. 0 squared is 1. I think. No? What gives 1 from 0? Something gives 1 from 0. I know that something does. Anyway. Okay. Is it x to the... Yes, it's x to the 0 power. That's what it is. So if I do, like, anything to the 0 power, I get 1. Okay. That's actually fair. 2 to the 0 power is also 1. Anyways, square root of 0 apparently is... I don't know what happens. I assume it just returns 0. I don't even know if it crashes or anything. But then atan2, right? Like, atan2 is a division, so if these two are 0, I think it breaks. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, we're getting off track. The point is, we should never expect the same values from both. So if pause from is equal to pause to, that is an error. And we should just error out here, so we don't end up causing more problems, right? Warning, position from and position 2 are equal, this is not allowed. You can't point to something that's itself. So I would rather error out. Same with angle 2. Same situations. So I'm just adding those in as checks, as obviously we should never end up in that situation. So now we go back to... I just want to crash with a more friendly message rather than here's the result, we get infinity. Infinity gets passed somewhere and now causes dangerous things to happen. Luckily, we had an error that catches infinity somewhere else in my code, so that didn't happen. Well, it was the normalize function. When it divide by 0, there's an assert inside there that does that. Or division by 0 in general does that. So, back over here, when we spawn the lightning emitter, we need to not use the same variable. We need to just say the end pause is something else. Perhaps we just make it the target, right? Like that makes sense. We just make it the target at first. So target get pause. I think that's very fair. And besides, we're gonna set it again later anyway. Or we just set a random position right at the beginning. Why not, right? Let's just do that. We'll just do one of these. Set a random position right there. Right in the calculation. So I like that. That actually makes more sense too. Because what's going to happen if I set to the player position, it's going to make a lightning bolt going from the thunder orb to, or the lightning orb to the player. And it's going to look like it's hitting you, but it's clearly not. So we definitely don't want that behavior either. So that's fine. I'm trying to think, am I missing something else? I think that's it. Why am I suddenly thinking of something else? Alright, let's just go. If I remember, I will adjust something else. That's all I got for now. Oh, let me remove the other things from the map while we're at it. Remove this frost mage, remove the crab, right? We don't need you guys. I'm only gonna include one lightning mage for now. Go ahead and save. And the game didn't start yet, so it didn't load this map. So we're still good. And then just gonna regenerate the cache for this map, because it should detect that this map has changed. Which is fine. So we should see 3 loading screens. One to load the title, then one to recache, and then one load the title a second time. Oh, that's interesting. Does it respawn the monsters after? There's like double of every monster. I'm pretty sure it made That's interesting. I'm just gonna make a little side note, footnote there. It looks like there's double the monsters on this map now. I think we don't reset them if we go to title screen. I'm trying to think why. I guess it's because we don't call reset game. Because we're not technically loading the map again. Or we already have this map loaded, we're just loading it a second time, in theory. We're not calling reset game. Just something to think about. There's twice the number of monsters there should be. So I wonder what happens if we can get it to cache even more maps, right? That would be funny. Anyway, that's something for later. That's technically a bug. It will only happen if we have to cache the maps, though. So it's not like it's gonna, like, quadruple up and then turn into 8 times the monsters or anything. But that is funny, and it should be resolved at some point, but it's kind of minor. It won't be noticeable to the average player, unless you're very familiar with the title screen, which I am. I've seen it a million times. Okay, so it still says position 2 and from are equal. So let me find out why. I thought I fixed it. It's calling point 2 from homing bullet constructor. It's calling this constructor, which... Target get oh, I see. We're still spawning it on the player, that's why. Okay, let's fix that. That's the part I forgot to do. Go to monster ability, and in here, we're not casting it on the player, we're casting it from the... So the cast position is the player position, so we have to cast it from the monster's position. It's going to spawn from it instead. Because naturally it's aiming towards the player, but we don't want that. At least I would not like that. Alright. I don't know if we'll get to that movement code today, but that would be next. But we gotta call it pretty soon here. I know it's a short session, but just didn't get much of a chance to do much today. Which is fine. We have those days, but we'll get more chances later on, of course. I just want to make sure this guy does what he's supposed to do right now, or at least we get to kind of see it in action and see if there's anything we have to fix, right? I guess that's the big thing. Let's try to see what happens. Okay, so there is the Thunder Orb. You can see it just spawning little lightning zaps going in what looks to be just one direction, which is fine. That's kind of how it's supposed to be. Oh. I forgot to add iframes. That's fair. Okay. Well, at least we know that works. Well, actually, it's supposed to only hit the player once every tick, so why did it keep hitting? I feel like we ran into this last time too. We had the same issue, right? Trying to think. The damage tick timer. Oh, maybe this is wrong. Hold on. I didn't actually check this. I just I wrote it and then I didn't check on it, right? So minus equals. Minus equals is down here, 16th in precedence. The less than or equals comparator is up here, 9th in precedence. So it's gonna do this comparison first, which is always gonna evaluate to false, and then it's gonna subtract false from damage tick timer, which is 0, right? And then 0, well, it's greater than 0, so it's gonna return true. So that's how this currently evaluates. It's very stupid. Let me wrap this in parentheses, so this evaluates first. That's also why we usually don't do this. Ideally, you just do this like a normal human being. I was just taking a shortcut. But yes, that's why you don't do that. Alright. Let me run it one more time. I thought it was kind of funny to just think about, okay, how does this actually evaluate right now? There's a lot of files up there? There are. Yeah. It's a very large project, and we do touch multiple files every day. But yes. Welcome, welcome, clip load user. Loader user. Try this again. And yeah, this is just one screen. So we have 6 screens, and we just keep different things on all of them. So really, we have like at least 40 or 50 files open at any point in time to like work on. That's fun. Okay. So let's try this again. I think the condition has been corrected now. So there's our once every tick. It only did 1 damage, which is not right. It's definitely not just supposed to do 1 damage. I'm just trying to think why. But you can see it zaps us once every second. I think it would be cool if we're in range, it actually causes the lightning bolt to zap the player itself. I also think we could just make the zaps more frequent. I think that would look cooler. I don't think it really looks the way I intended right now. It also is supposed to follow the player, so that part is not working either, but we didn't actually add that code yet, so let's do that now. Actually, it's supposed to do the homing bullets AI, so I'm not sure why it's not. Because the target was set. So homing bullet should be following the target. Maybe the rotation speed. Oh, I see. The rotate towards speed is supposed to determine how fast it can rotate towards the player. And we set that to 0, so we need to actually fix that. Oh, it looks so nice. Yeah, we have a extension called IDE Wallpaper, which just lets us add whatever backgrounds we wanted to rotate between. You can also change the colors of the IDE and such. So, it's nice. It makes the code harder to read, of course. Okay, let me see. So, the rotate towards speed is not supposed to be 0. I think this is in pixels per... Or no, it's in radians per second. So, how fast do we want it to rotate, essentially? I'm thinking maybe half up... maybe 1 pi per second. Like in 1 second, it can complete a 180-degree rotation. I think that's fair. I feel like that's decent. So let's try a pi rotation speed. And then let's also add more zaps. So we're actually going to make another tick timer specifically for... Actually, we just changed the lightning emitter's tick rate. So maybe I'll make that as a setting. We'll just add that as another configuration option. It's just a visual one. It doesn't affect anything else. So Thunder Orb tick rate, Thunder Orb lightning bolt tick rate, which will make like... Let's do one every like 1/10 of a second, so it's just like zap, 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 zap. Maybe a little less than that, maybe 0.2 seconds. The ID definitely passes the rule of cool. Well, according to some folks, I have to use, I have to at least use Vim to pass the cool test, so I don't quite succeed there, but it's okay. Maybe someday. They're like, oh, if you don't use Vim, you're not cool enough. Be cooler. Nerds. Alright. Thunder Orb, Lightning Bolt tick rate. So I need to add that to the list of settings, which means I need to update this struct. Let's see. So Lightning Orb tick rate, or Lightning Bolt tick rate. Make that a capital T. Here, we'll do Lightning Bolt tick rate equals config float Thunder Orb Lightning Bolt tick rate. So now that we have that config parameter, we can go back in Thunder Orb and set that under our settings here and pass that in. And now there should be more zappies. Now let's figure out why the attack damage is wrong. So we have get attack times attack multiplier. So I would assume get attack returns properly. Like, that's the first thing. Oh, it's the target's attack. So if, like, the player's attack... It uses the player's attack damage, which... My attack damage was fairly high. I'm surprised I didn't take more damage. Does the TXT file include your custom data format? Yes, it is a custom data format. So, as long as it looks like this, I read it in using the... It's called an OLC util data file. So you can kind of see it's almost like a YAML or JSON-ish. Actually, it's closer to, what is it, INI files, if you think about it. But it's very, like, human-readable and parsable, which is kind of nice. So that's one of the benefits of it. And you can just add symbols that get ignored, too. So it's helpful for labeling. It's just kind of a nice format I ended up adopting. Very human readable. But then I also have like my notes. So this one's a note file. This one is not a config file. Just notes given to me by my game designer for me to translate. So, but yeah, all the TXT files, as you can see, they're a little more structured. They're read in as data files. So that's nice. Okay. So I need to figure out why our damage is wrong. I guess that's the next thing. Because we do respect the attack multiplier from there. Alright, I guess we're going to debug for this one. So I'm gonna probably breakpoint when this occurs, and we'll just take a look at what the numbers say. The numbers will tell us the problem. They are indeed readable, yeah. Very, very readable, indeed. I just like it. It's a good format. Alright, probably the last thing we're doing today, considering we have to rebuild the whole project in debug mode. Yeah, I wonder what's going on, because get attack... I mean, we made this today, but I don't expect get attack to not return the attack. Unless it returns like an attack multiplier, I could see that. So let's take a look at that, actually. Let me go to monster. Like, I assume it actually returns the attack stat with the multipliers included. Yeah, so this function actually does a couple of things. It reads every single bonus and puts it all together, starting from your base stat. So you have a base attack, and then it adds all these percent bonuses. If it's a percent bonus, it will like add it or multiply it. But if it's a, well, it'll add all the percentages together and then multiply it. So that's where the percent bonus sum comes from. It sums all the percents, then multiplies them. So it's an additive percent bonus. And then we have our flat bonuses. I don't know why it says flat bonuses twice. That's actually weird. But our unit tests pass, so the amount of damage they do is correct. That looks really weird to me. Why are there two flat bonus variables? Oh, never mind. This is multiplied by this. Never mind. Order of operations. I have no parentheses in there. It looks confusing. Okay. Anyway, yes, a percentage of whatever the final damage is. Really, this should say, like, damage before, or, like, damage before final calculations or something. And flat bonuses should be just the bonus part and not the base stat part. Like, these should be separated, in theory. If I were to rewrite the variables, that's what I would do to avoid that confusion. Anyway, let's take a look. Obviously, debug runs slower, but we have map caching, so that does save us a little bit of time, luckily. Compared to before, where we would have to wait on that screen for like 30 seconds for almost no reason. So, we should hit the breakpoint here when this thing spawns. Well, actually, we'll hit it when we get hurt. Also, those lightning bolts were down by the monster, so I messed that up somehow. Oh, it's because now we don't set this with every tick, so we still have to... we have to change this a little bit. We'll figure that out in a minute. But anyway... okay, let's take a look at get attack. So right now, attack mult is... Oh, it's 0.009? Is that right? That is 0.9%. It should be 0.9... No, it should be 1 right now, I think? Why did we divide by... Oh, I see. It's a... Wait, what? Attack multiplier. I divide it by 100. So it goes from 1 to 0.01. Wait, no, it's supposed to go from 100. Oh, it's a multiplier, so it's 1.0x. Okay, that's what's happening. So I usually put either mult or percent. If I put percent, I divide by 100. But if it's mult, it's times 1. That's why. So I just messed that up. That's a simple fix. So for the lightning bolt, we need to take this frequency and we need another timer local to this that will keep changing the lightning bolt random pause all the time. Or we could just put this in the tick in general. That's not an expensive function. I'm okay with doing that every single tick of the game. Right? We're not really losing anything from doing that. I'm okay with this. We'll just do that. So I think all the behaviors are now corrected. We take the correct amount of damage. The lightning bolt random position will be adjusted every tick, so we will always see the lightning bolt choose a different location. And we should be happy now. And I think we'll call it for today after this. So again, short coding session, but Thunder Orb should be complete now. I may adjust the graphic a little bit. It is kind of weird, so that's the only thing. Like, I kind of just made a little placeholder graphic, but I'll probably refine it a little bit, make it a little cooler looking. And that's pretty much the Thunder Orb attack, and all spells for the mages are done. So tomorrow we'll work on the AI code to make the mages stay away from the player and stay near any flags within a 700 to 900 range as well. Because those flags buff them, increase their speed, so they want to be by those. So that will be what we do tomorrow, and then we'll work on other monsters. Okay, so we can see it now rotates towards the player. That is a significant amount of damage, I think. I don't know if that's right, because the Lightning Mage has an attack of 44, right? So how would an attack mult of 1 cause that much damage? Yeah, that seems kind of weird, right? Let's try this one more time, just see what numbers we're getting, because I think that's wrong. Something's wrong. Unless it got buffed by something. I don't think it buffs itself, though. So that would mean we'd have to, like... We'd either have to take multiple hits of damage in one go, or somehow we're either get attack is wrong again, or that attack mult variable is still wrong. So this time attack mult is 1, so it'll be whatever the target's attack is. Let's go and get attack. Okay, get attack is gonna go inside the player's attack? Oh, that's why we're taking so much damage. The player does have a lot of attack. It's not supposed to be the player's attack. That's what I was saying earlier about the target, right? I didn't change that. So it's not the target, it's the monster's attack, which means we have to store the attack of the attacker as a variable, which we originally did, and then I deleted it. So we're gonna say the damage this is supposed to do is going to be right here. Should we snapshot it? That's the next question. I don't think we should. We should multiply by whatever is incoming by the attack mult. Well, actually this will mean it's snapshotted, but yes. We want to do it like this, I think, and just bring in the raw damage, not the calculated final damage. So we'll just say, I'm going to call this the monster damage and not the final damage. That way I don't get confused. So we're adding an int parameter to our constructor. So I go back to bullet types and do the same thing. It was the third argument. So I'll add it there too, which means I have to now adjust the call when we create it here to say monster get attack. And we'll just pass that in directly. And that should fix that. Okay. And somehow I put another comma there. We'll rebuild that real quick and make sure everything is happy now. We should be good after this. And then we will call it for today. I should make more perlers of my characters from my game. Yeah. The Ranger's my favorite, so I made a little one of her, but I want to make a couple more. They're cute. I made some slimes for my friends and just gave it to them. So I want to make a couple more. They're cute. Monster damage is undeclared identifier? Why? Oh, we need to actually set it. Monster, we have to add it first to the class. So let's do that. Int monster damage, store that. And then, actually, it's supposed to be stored inside the damage of the bullet, I think. That's supposed to be a thing. Hold on, let me see. I want to say, because it's a bullet, it's supposed to have a damage parameter. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's supposed to. Let me see. Okay, yes, damage is a parameter. We just set to 0, I presume. Yes, this is the damage parameter right here. So this gets set to monster damage. So we just had to pass it via constructor. We didn't have to make it ourselves. So I can go ahead and undo that change. And then in here, we just grab our damage. Hopefully it's protected. Okay, good. It's a protected member, so we have access to it. And now we wait for the final rebuild. Hopefully. Hopefully the final rebuild. And we'll call it a day. Alright, let's see. Let's see it. Let's see it. Fun little coding session today. Nothing too crazy, but it's kind of nice to see some gameplay stuff being worked on again. We haven't done it in a while. We spent a few weeks optimizing some things that really needed to be optimized. So I'm glad to kind of be on that little grind again. It's low processes, slowly adding stuff, right? Nothing too crazy, but just adding to the gameplay systems every single day until everything's done. Currently working on Chapter 4. The goal is to be done with all of Chapter 4 stuff by next month. And then we work on Chapter 5 stuff for the following month and a half or so. Which puts us at a good testing spot for the game around mid-May or early June. And then once we're ready to start testing everything for the game with everything implemented, we can find all the fun bugs or changes we want to do, right? Maybe X system is not working, or is not balanced, or is not fun, right? And then we'll go from there. So that is the correct amount of damage. We're constantly getting hit. The bullet is following us. Yes, so this is good. This is more the intention. I do think the lightning, like, we should be updating the start pause to like stay with the bullet. I think it looks weird that it just like creates it and then it just kind of flies away. I think it should look more like it's tethered to it. So we'll work on that, fixing that tomorrow. But other than that, functionally, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And again, I might update the bullet graphic a tiny bit, but I am happy with that result. So we'll call it a day here. I hope you all enjoyed today's stream. Implemented the Thunder Orb ability, or monster spell. That is release build 12957. We'll soon be at 13,000 builds. Yay. I typoed that, but that's okay. Infamous for random typos. Okay. But yeah. For those of you that tuned in today, thank you for stopping by. We'll see you all tomorrow for another coding session. Take care. Bye-bye.